Hello, good morning. My name is Ibuku Emmanuel Adebayo, and you're welcome to this evening's session regarding the topic, my CV and LinkedIn profile, which is my unique selling point. Why are we holding this session today? Because I've received quite a few calls regarding individuals' CVs where they deem that they're not actually receiving phone calls from recruiters. I've helped quite a few people to redesign their CV to try and sell their best competencies, including on their LinkedIn profile. Within the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp community, of which we're around 2,490 at my last viewing, we've had quite a few requests and discussions again around how to prepare a CV. We don't need to struggle as long as we're selling our best competencies. Designing a CV is not about including qualifications only. Your LinkedIn profile is not about your qualifications only, because that is not the sum total of who you are. So my CV and LinkedIn profile includes quite a bit about me, including a glimpse into my character. Besides my qualifications, besides my experience, I've also provided a glimpse into what I'm about, what I would be like to work with, my character. So let's take a look now at today's session. Let's just move forward with today's session, where we'll be talking about my CV, my LinkedIn profile, and my unique selling points. So what is in my CV before we actually visit the CV, before we view my CV? I've included what I've done. That is my experience. So my work experience is within my CV, listed out in chronological order. I've also included what I can do. So if I've done anything in a voluntary capacity, or I've learned how to do something in a workshop or in training, as long as I can replicate what I've learned confidently, then it's listed in my CV. I've also included where I've done what I've listed in my CV, including where I've had to work as a volunteer for a few years following a fall in my career, which is why I actually registered the Ladder Back Down. I registered the Ladder Back Down to try and inspire Black humans to continue to elevate ourselves rather than to cut ourselves off at the knees, because it costs nothing to be kind towards your fellow human. And that is your fellow human, regardless of their race, regarding of their sexuality, regardless of their religion, which may be different to yours. It costs absolutely nothing to be kind to our fellow human being. And I started the Ladder Back Down community and registered Ladder Back Down in January 2020 to try and inspire us as Black humans specifically to just be kind towards one another. Other races do that so well. And rather than complain about other races taking care of themselves, why don't we actually take care of ourselves? I'd love to have an audience with politicians in Black nations where I would implore them similarly to just be kind to their fellow human beings, towards their fellow Black citizens, to just be kind, to put themselves in the shoes of their fellow Black humans. There's absolutely no reason, and this is not a political speech, for a politician to own 5 houses whilst a citizen is out there on the streets with no house, not able to afford 2 meals a day. I'm not even saying 3 meals a day now. I'm talking about 2 meals a day. Some people can't afford a single meal a day. And because I'm not a politician, I've decided to pay back in my own little way by starting the Ladder Back Down. Following my experience, which I'll talk about candidly in my session on Sunday night, where I'll be imploring us to not give up, because you and I are not failures. So do not give up. That's the title of my seminar, which will be rather late on Sunday evening into Monday morning, for a reason. So I'll be telling you, anyone who's attending, to please do not give up, because you are valid. Whether you've got a job or not today, whether you've got a job where you're not doing what you've been trained to do, what you enjoy doing, you are still valid. You are valuable. Your job, my job, is not my character. My day job, and it's great to have a day job because we all have needs. We all have bills. So it's great to have a day job. It's great to run a business if you are a business person. However, that job, that title, whether you're a cleaner or a CEO, is not your worth. It's not your character. You're valid. You are valued. Even if you don't feel valued, you are valued, at least by the Ladder Back Down and by me as an individual. I value every human being that I meet, because I know that we're all uniquely created for a purpose. So you're valid, you're valued, and you are valuable. Again, regardless of your job title today or your job circumstance, even if you don't have a job, you're still valuable. To the Ladder Back Down, you are valid, you're valued, and you're valuable. And I hate walking into buildings and seeing a security guard or a cleaner. And I always make it a point of duty to say hello loudly and clearly to that cleaner, to that security guard of whatever race, to make them feel valued. However, I hate walking into an organization or anywhere and I see a fellow Black human cleaning and I ask them what they've done previously and they say, oh, I used to be a banker in Nigeria. I used to be a lawyer, but I can't find a job. I'm tired of walking into organizations and seeing that. And you should be too. It's okay if someone deems that all they want to be is a cleaner, because we need cleaners. And we can tell that from the last COVID crisis, from the last pandemic, it was the cleaners, the delivery drivers, the care workers that were out there trying to help society through the crisis, which is why I said that regardless of your title, you are valuable and you are valid and you are valued. Cleaners trying to keep the environment clean in hospitals, everywhere. But if that's not what you desire to do, so you've spent all this money on university fees and you can't find a job, so you've had to go and take up cleaning, then I'm saying to you today that we need to work on your CV. We need to bring out that uniqueness in you, put it onto paper, put it on your LinkedIn profile, and let's start selling you to the world. Let's start selling you to recruiters. Back to my CV, I've also included in my personal profile statement what I would like to do, the culture I would like to work in. And that is so important for me. The culture. I've come to appreciate that if the culture is toxic, that role will never end well for me. And I'd say this to you as well, that regardless of how long you've been without a job for, please don't apply to a toxic workplace, because that workplace won't end well for you and me. If you value your integrity, which is what I've included on my personal profile so that everybody knows to not approach me for a job if the workplace does not value integrity. So if you value your integrity, don't be scared to state that on your profile and on your LinkedIn profile, in your profile statement, as well as your LinkedIn profile. Don't be scared to state that, because whilst it might cost you a few jobs where the culture is toxic, it will save your mental health, your mental well-being. And it won't cost you your peace of mind. Working in a toxic culture is not a productive decision to be made or taken. Don't, out of desperation to work anywhere, knowingly go into a toxic workplace, because that never ends well. Which is why you check up Glassdoor when applying for roles. Before applying for a role, you check up Glassdoor, see what employees are saying about that workplace. If the majority are talking about toxicity, then you need to maybe give that workplace a miss. Don't go into a workplace thinking, I can change them. Don't think I can change this workplace, so I'm just going to go there and see, just to get a name on my CV. Spare yourself pain. So I've included what I would like to do on my CV, and I've also included relevant old roles. Why have I included relevant old roles? Following an incident at work in 2013, I couldn't get a paid job. Nobody would pay me for my skills and my competencies for 5 years, essentially. I'll talk about what happened clearly on Sunday night if you're attending the workshop that I'm offering then from 10 p.m. So if you haven't actually registered for that, don't worry, you can just view the link to the workshop on Sunday evening in the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp community. But I couldn't work commercially for 5 years. So I made sure that I kept all the relevant roles on my CV, because I was looking to return to the financial services sector after an absence of 20 years or so. Not 20 years now, actually. I'd say that, not 20 years at the time, but I'd say about 15 years at the time, but about 20 years now or so. So I was looking to return to the financial services sector after such a long absence. And then something happened at work. My integrity has cost me a lot in more than one workplace, but would I compromise on my integrity? No, I won't. So I included relevant old roles there because I still desired to work in the financial services sector. And then I went to obtain my first degree. My first degree, of course, was in finance. It was an MBA in finance. Just to continue to send that signal to the financial services sector that indeed was where I wanted to return to, despite what had happened. So relevant old roles are in my CV. And when we talk about the number of pages that my CV is, I'm sure there'll be questions on why my CV is that length. What have I omitted from my CV? What I no longer want to do. So if I've done something previously, for example, I don't want to return to configuring firewalls and configuring routers as a networks engineer. Whereas early on in my career, I was the head of IT somewhere, but because it was a charitable organization and the team was rather small, I was hands-on. I was also the technical lead, building servers, putting firewalls in place, but I would no longer want to do that. I haven't built my career as a technical architect. or an infrastructure architect, even though I could still do it, but it's no longer what I want to do. So I haven't emphasized that on my CV. Gaps, please fill your gaps with something. You can choose to volunteer. And as we're aware, there are volunteering opportunities within the Ladder Back Down. We started a project in April or May, and we had over 400 volunteer applications. That project has now closed for applications because it has started. However, from September, we'll be viewing another project, another big project. So again, we'll be opening up a call for new volunteers. So do something to fill the gap. If you can't volunteer somewhere, study. For the 5 years where I couldn't find anyone to believe in me again and to just hire me for a fee, I had loads of people willing to offer me volunteering opportunities, but the trust that this fellow Black human being had broken or destroyed or attempted to destroy, dare I say, that trust was very difficult to restore on my part. So I filled that gap by volunteering, and I filled the gap by also studying for certification. And doing my MBA. So fill the gaps in your experience with something. There are some free qualification certifications that we've posted repeatedly within the Ladder Back Down WhatsApp group. And I'll share these again over the weekend. If someone could kindly remind me. Scrum, project management, and cybersecurity certifications. Do those to fill the gap in your CV. Please don't include your address in your CV. I see that a lot when I'm talking to people on a one-to-one basis. Don't include your address there unless you only specifically want to work in an area where you can't relocate or you can't travel to work. Because if you live in Doncaster, let's say, and you include your address in Doncaster, even if you can commute to work in London, a recruiter might view that address and think, well, this person may be late sometimes, or they may not want to come into work often because Doncaster to London is far. Whereas if you can travel and you live in Doncaster, then exclude Doncaster from your CV and LinkedIn profile. So remove your address unless you are limited in terms of the areas that you can work. And I know someone asked the question about what if you want to work remotely full time? And I think that the number of 100% remote jobs are dwindling fast. Remote working, 100% remote working increased considerably. Well, I mean, it was enforced on us during COVID. But now the pandemic is over, there is a growing sense on behalf of companies to say, okay, it's time to come back into work. 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. In some cases, you may find an opportunity where they say, okay, you can come into work a few times a month, like twice a month, 3 times a month. However, the requirement for 100% remote roles is dwindling unless you're lucky enough to be a clever developer. Yes, then there are some fully remote development roles. I tried my hand at development many years ago, programming, SQL programming and Oracle PLSQL programming. But I found out very quickly that this is not for me. I used to actually train it. But then I found out, okay, hang on a minute, that I'm not as quiet as most developers are. So I decided to not go down that career route. Don't include your date of birth on your CV to avoid discrimination. My email address is ibukunea78@gmail.com for a reason. And I've shared my email address with us because it's on my CV that we're about to review. Don't give any indication of your age. So if you went to uni in 1942, don't include that 1942 on your CV. If you went to uni in an African country and you realize that, okay, that a recruiter might see that and discriminate against you, don't include the country where you went to university. You don't need it there unless you're applying within that country for roles. Don't include anything on your CV that could give rise to bias or discrimination. Your name, you don't need your full name and middle names on your CV. And if your name is hard to pronounce, maybe break it down phonetically. So on my CV, I sometimes will spell my name, put in brackets, my name, double E or ebook, and then put an double O-N at the end of it. So ibukun, to enable the recruiter to easily pronounce your name. Because if they can't pronounce your name, if I were to put my full name on my CV, which I'll be quite honest, I actually changed my middle name, my first name, Caroline. I changed that and adopted my middle name that I was given, Ibukoluakbo, because that means the blessings of the Lord are plentiful. And it's the name my mom used to call me. And because of the meaning, I decided to adopt that name instead of Caroline, because I used to go into offices, and I still do today, and you'd always meet a Caroline. So I decided to change my name. But I've never put on my CV or LinkedIn profile Ibukolu Akpo. I've simply put Ibukun there. I don't like being called IBK. I hate that with a passion because it's taken away from my name. And my name is not IBK. IBK has no meaning. So I prefer being called by my name. And I always call that out. If somebody calls me IBK, I'll simply say to them, you can either call me Ibukun or you can call me Ibukun Oluwapo. So which one is more convenient for you to pronounce? So if you've got 3 names or so, 3 Yoruba names, for example, please don't put all those names on your CV, because a recruiter will see that and see a John Smith. And of course, they're going to naturally be inclined to ring up someone whose name they can easily pronounce. So I know Remy has just asked the question, okay, can I shorten my name to Remy? Yes, you can shorten it to Remy. When you get to the interview, you get the job, what would you like to be called? You can say, okay, yep, I want to be called my full name. And your email address as well. Please don't include ibukunoluwapo78@gmail.com. Why not? Because if a recruiter wants to contact you by email and they misspell your email address, they'll never know that the email didn't get to you. And so what do? They send out that email. Hey, we've got a job. Are you interested in the job? Send it out to you, misspelling your name. And then you never receive the email. So you're none the, you're not aware that actually that a recruiter's tried to contact you. So create an email address that is easy for someone to spell. Even Yoruba people, funnily enough, they still add an extra N to my name sometimes when they're writing it down. And they spell it Ibunkun when it's Ibukun. So try and make your email address as easy as possible for a recruiter to reach out to you. It takes nothing away from you if your email address is half of your name. So it takes nothing away from me for a recruiter to send an email to Ibukun EA78 rather than Ibukun Oluwapo, EA78@gmail.com. You don't need to include on your CV reference available on request, because that's just taking up space and the recruiter knows that they'll obtain a reference if they get to the point of actually hiring you. So don't include that on your CV. And don't include the words email, telephone number, because it's obvious to a recruiter that when you type in ea78@gmail.com, that is actually an email address. And when you type in your phone number on your CV, they know that's a telephone number. So don't state the obvious, basically. We'll talk about my LinkedIn profile once we've discussed my CV now. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to stop this share and do a new share where I'll take us to my CV. So what is on my CV? My CV is packed. And it's packed, as I said, for a reason, simply because I went through this period of real stress. I mean, it was really stressful, I must say, really stressful. So let's take from the top. I've got my name and surname, and then I've got my degree. And I've put that MBA finance be at the side of my name, simply because I want that to be the first thing that they see, considering that I'm now a financial services industry professional. So they see that, then they see my name and my email address. Now let's read what I've written in my profile statement. And I know someone's asked the question, Do you need a lengthy profile statement like this if you want to work as a middle manager? This isn't about your title. I've just put my profile statement here, and I must admit that I've shared my CV with multiple people from different industries where they've adapted the profile statement. So they've taken the profile statement and then drafted their own. And they haven't copied the profile statement. And I'll say it's important that we don't copy someone else's profile statement, because I remember last year or the year prior to that, I received a call from a recruiter at a consultancy firm, and he was really passionate about getting me into that consultancy firm. I've never wanted to be a consultant. It's not something that has interested me ever. So I just didn't want to have my CV submitted. But he said, no, there's this recruitment drive for Black female professionals. And so I'd really like to submit your CV to the hiring manager. And he said that he would provide me with feedback from the hiring manager. When the hiring manager provided feedback, the gentleman, the recruiter, then forwarded me that feedback. He didn't actually edit it or anything. And what the hiring manager said, which made me clear that I'm definitely not going to work there, he said this, he'd written that this lady has too many qualifications, not sure where she would fit in within the team with so many qualifications. And then he concluded that, but he did say that actually that because she's security cleared, she could do, I mean, she could serve us well. So I'd like to see her. But then he concluded, he said, but you need to check with HR because I'm sure that I've seen this CV before. So check to see if she hasn't been rejected from a previous application. Now, considering that I'd never, ever submitted my CV to that organization, I knew then that someone had cloned my CV, but I told the recruiter that that's not why I wouldn't want, why I didn't want to work with that company. I said that I just simply didn't want to work with it. And I definitely don't want to work with a manager who deems that I've got too many qualifications, because I don't want to compete with you for your job. I've always been clear that I'm contented with the job that I'm hired to do. I've always been contented. I've never gone after my line manager's role or anything like that. So I told the recruiter that, look, that I'm a bit concerned. I never wanted to apply for the role anyway, but you've encouraged me to apply for the role. And I said, I'm a bit concerned with this, with this hiring manager's assertion that I've got too many qualifications. They don't know why I've had to continue studying. And I am a continuous learner, and I'd encourage each and every one of us to actually continue to learn. Until the day that I drop, I'll continue learning. If not learning something relating to my career, I'll still continue learning. And I believe that I can learn from any human being. I can even learn from a toxic manager, because I'll learn how not to behave towards my team members. So continue to learn, continue to observe how to behave or how not to behave. Continue to learn towards your career. You don't want to be the person that's saying, oh, that it's tough after 40 to get a job. It's only tough if we don't continue to learn, if we don't continue to study. So my personality profile on my statement, I've written there clearly that I've got experience across multiple sectors. Previously, I used to list the sectors as in financial services, education, charity sector, public sector, etc. But I've summarized it now: a multi-sector UK government, security cleared, integrity driven. So I've written that I'm security cleared so people know that I'm trustworthy, regardless of what's happened in my past, regardless of how many dismissals or whatever that I may have had. I am trustworthy. So I've written that as my first unique selling point. And I've written, as I said previously, that I'm integrity driven, so that if a company is not integrity fueled, then they shouldn't approach me. I've made it clear that I don't want to be approached by a company or a hiring manager or a recruiter that lacks integrity. It's not worth it. Going into an organization where the environment and the culture is toxicity, where the culture is deception. I don't want anyone to approach me to do something untoward, and then when things go south, then they say that Nigerian. Have you noticed that when somebody does something positive in the UK, if the person is UK born, I was born here, or if they become a British citizen, they say, oh, the British, British, Ibukun Emmanuel Adebayo, etc., etc. But if I've done something wrong, of course, the first thing that is said is the Nigerian. Ibukun originates from Nigeria. So I don't want to work in a company where you're going to tell me to do something untoward, and then people start insulting Nigeria. I'm proud of my origins as a Nigerian. I'm extremely proud. I'm proud that I'm a Black woman. I'm proud. I don't wish to be a human of another race, although I am a writer. So that is the main gifting that I was birthed with. And I have always imagined writing a script on if I were God. And I've imagined that the script would play out that everyone would be born as, you would be reborn 3 times. So first time of being born, you'd be born as a Caucasian human being. Second time, you'd be birthed as an Asian human being. Last time, you'd be birthed as a Black human being. So everyone would be given 3 turns on this planet Earth. I've always dreamed of writing a film, and that the way that you treat your fellow human being when you're born as a Caucasian human being is the same way that you'd be treated when you're born as a Black human being. So I've always dreamt of writing a script, and I probably will produce a script on that one day. But I've written there that I'm integrity driven because I'm proud of my integrity. I'm proud of my track record of integrity. And I always say that integrity may not pay you in the coin that you deserve or that you desire it to pay you in, but integrity still pays. Integrity still matters. Integrity may cost you a lot. It may cost you your home. But for me personally, integrity still matters. There's no organization without politics, but hold on to your integrity and state clearly on your CV. If you are integrity driven, state it clearly on your CV, because it will save you a lot of bother in the long term. So I've written that I'm integrity driven, and I've now written that I'm experienced and agile, operational and strategic IT, cybersecurity, privacy, and GRC leader, so that everyone knows the different areas that I can operate within. And so if a recruiter is searching for a cybersecurity leader or privacy leader or GRC leader, they type in those keywords on LinkedIn, my CV will come up. And now I've talked about my experience, represented a global investment bank. And this is specifically because my CV is geared towards the financial services sector. And then I've outlined some of my knowledge. If you serve in a voluntary capacity related to the role that you want to move into, put it here on your CV. If you're serving on a ladder back down project currently, put it there on your CV. And I've now stated what I would like to do going forward. I would like to continue to use my experience, etc., etc. And I've stated that I'd like to work in a permanent role. So if you're looking for a contract role, state that on your CV. Interested in a contract role. But if you're interested in a permanent role, again, state that on your CV. I'm looking to work in a permanent role to reduce IT, cyber, third-party conduct, and all of this risk, fraud risk. And I'd like to do that to help companies to reduce those fines. I don't know why companies get fined millions repeatedly. I'd like to help companies to do that. So I'm not just stating what I would like to get out of my career. I've stated what I would like to get out of my career by continuing to work in these sort of environments. But I've also stated why I would like to work in that sort of environment, to reduce these risks and to also reduce the fines to companies. But I've ended within a culturally rich organization, so that every organization knows that if you've got that toxic culture, please don't call me. Please don't call me. Because I don't do toxicity anymore. That never ends well for me. It has never ended well. And I now know to state it loud and clear that this is what I want. I've also written my core competencies, and rather than put what I think are my personal core competencies, I've been lucky enough, although again, this hasn't really, each time now that I'm asked, okay, to do a personality profile test or whatever, I don't like it, because each time I was asked to do these 2 personality profile tests or leadership tests within 2 different organizations, the results caused a lot of negativity towards me. So I've written here my core competencies from feedback. So I've stated where the feedback has come from. Is that my top 7 strengths are leading, emotional control. I'm able to control my emotions, which can sometimes be a detriment. Because if you're there and you're sitting there and you know that you need to move on and you know that you just need to move away from that toxicity, and yet you're there thinking that things will change, things will be all right. Not speaking up. It ends up costing you. Or it could end up costing you. So emotional control, developing others, top strengths, decisiveness, creativity, courage, compassion. So these were viewed as my top strengths following a leadership assessment in a bank I worked with. And then it came out, the report also said that 25% emotional, that my leadership style is 25% emotional, 27% relational, execution 24%, and thinking 24%. So a rounded leader. So I put it there clearly, rather than simply say that I'm a leader, I control my emotions, I develop others, which I like doing, I'm decisive, etc. And then in a previous role, before SocGen, I received this emotional intelligence assessment with the entire senior management team there. The book on is an enhanced leader. I've summarized that in 18 out of 20 leadership competencies, and an effective leader in the remainder 2. And she's overly passionate about personal accountability, which you need to be as well. You need to be able to account for all of your actions. Then I've put my education there. And what I've done is I've made sure I've limited my education and the years to those that wouldn't tell a recruiter exactly how old I am or how young I am. So my first diploma, 1996 to 1996. Then I did an IOD certificate for board directors. And then I now did my MBA in 2014 to 2016. Now let's take a look at why my CV is so long. Because I filled my the second half of my first page with all of my qualifications. Again, just to emphasize that I'm a well-rounded professional and that I believe in continuous learning. So rather than say that I believe in continuous learning, which I do, but I've also included the fact that, okay, I did my first round of certifications, 1998 to 2003, 2005, I then continued studying. Then I did 2006, 2007, 2008. Then I didn't study for about 3 years, but then when I resumed, 2012 to 2013, I started studying with the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, continued actually studying with them till 2019. And then 2019, 2020, I did something. 2018, we've got this here. We've got the GDPR practitioner work certification that I did. Then 2021, 2022, and I've only done one workshop, one certification in 2023, and I've still got 2 more to do. So I just listed those there so that if anyone's looking for a Prince 2 practitioner, for example, my name comes, my CV will pop up. If I'm looking for a program-related role or something, if anyone's looking for a financial crime, operational risk, financial crime, I can do that because I've studied that and my CV would come up. So that's why my CV is actually so long. And then we look at my employment history. So I've put here contracts and permanent roles to date, September 2022 to date, and I've put the 2 banks that I've worked with and continue to work with. And then we've got the DWP. So I've put there, I was a contractor, but I've changed the word contractor to consultant because I was offering consultancy. So if you've got a CV in response to a question that I've just seen there, if you've got a CV where you've done multiple contracts over the year, if I were you, I'd list your company As in, for example, if I were contracting through the ladder back down, I'd list my company, the ladder back down, at the top. And I'll actually show us an example. I think I may have an example lower down. And I'd list the different clients that I've worked with as a consultant, consulted with this company, provided this company with this, provided this company with this, XYZ, X, I mean, and that's just it. But I think that I may have an example at the bottom of my CV here. So DWP listed that. Now, one of the things that I've done is that I've made sure that I've included my voluntary work at the ladder back down, because I registered the ladder back down in January 2020, as I say, and I registered it as a self-funded social enterprise, charitable organization, which is funded solely by me. And it will always be funded solely by me. When I say it will always be funded solely by me, what I mean is that if I'm going to expand the organization in the future, I will never charge a member of the community for the service that is being provided. So please don't be scared that in future, because I know that when we called for volunteers the last time, some people were saying that they were rushing to volunteer before we decided to start charging for the opportunity. We will never charge for the opportunity for you to volunteer. We're using it to give our fellow Black humans that work experience, to just help in some way. Because I often dispute this saying that it's lonely at the top. It shouldn't be lonely at the top for any leader if you're remembering to look behind you to where you're coming from and to bring others alongside you to join you at the top. You see, I don't care if I bring someone to join me at the top and then that person is promoted above me. It costs me nothing at all. It fills my heart with pride that one of my greatest achievements was to have started an apprenticeship scheme in 2008 for a group of young school leavers that hadn't been on to university. So I proposed to the CEO then that we should start an apprenticeship scheme. And so we got 10 individuals, different races, different sexualities, different genders, got them in. They hadn't got any qualifications, having left school. And then we gave them the opportunity to develop within our team. Some of them worked with us for 5 years until I was let go of in that organization. But today, some of them are contractors earning a lot more money than I'm earning in my full-time role. Most of them are consultants in the city. I'm connected to them on LinkedIn, which is why I know what they're doing. It costs us nothing to raise someone else, to help them to become the best version of themselves ever. And please don't say that if I help my fellow Black human, that they'll probably do something and then they end up being my boss or something. Well, have you ever helped a fellow Caucasian human or a fellow Asian human and they've done the same to you? Why would you mind if it's your fellow Black human? judge each human being by their character, not by their race, or not by their complexion, or not by their height, not by their, weight or anything like that. Judge each human being. Don't say all Nigerians. Don't say all Black people, just as we shouldn't say all white people. I hate that saying. I hate any saying that generalizes a population. Don't say all men or all women. We are all unique, and we're talking about the uniqueness of your CV, the uniqueness of your LinkedIn profile. Make it your unique selling point. So here I've written why I founded the Ladder Back Down in January 2020. I wanted to build a team of Black volunteers. I wanted to offer free mentorship to those around and coming behind us. I wanted to continue to offer cyber and IT weekend workshops and interview clothing vouchers to professionals, Black professionals, and underrepresented groups of humans and youth seeking integrity-focused leadership, business, digital, IT, and cybersecurity roles. Wanted to send the ladder back down. And I was just so surprised that the company name, the Ladder Back Down, hadn't been taken all these years. I also have included in my CV that I developed and presented a Forex trading from your bedroom workshop with a link to that workshop, with the aim of delivering this to Black youth gangs to encourage them to trade against each other in competition rather than keep killing one another. Because I get weary when I read of another Black youth having killed a fellow Black human. And that's not to say that anybody should kill anybody. It's not to say that a Black youth should go out there and kill another race's youth instead of a Black youth. Rather, it's to say, why kill each other? I've always had this dream to set up an annual competition between gangs, and I haven't fulfilled that dream yet, but I will. And I've now included my role at a bank, the 5 years of Baroness, nearly 6 years here where I was not paid for my skills. I still wrote what I did at the time. Not only did I provide consultancy, free consultancy and free training, but I also spoke. I was invited to speak in Vancouver. And it was a struggle to get the money together to fly out there because the fees that I was being paid was nominal. However, I chose to go out there to speak simply because I still believed that I had value. I still believed, and I still believe that I have value, that I carry value. I also spoke at the ISC Squared Secure Summit in Amsterdam at The Hague during this time, and in the UK. So based on that, we've got to just occupy ourselves during a gap and sell everything positive about ourselves. And here's where I was saying that, so if you've got loads of consultancy jobs that you've done, and you've done it through your limited company or through any company, an umbrella company, then include the title of the limited company or the umbrella company, because that's where an employer will get your reference from anyway. So include that title of that company, Risk Credivel and Alpha Consulting Holdings Limited. That's what I did for those 5.5 years. And I then included companies that I actually worked for. King's Court Solicitors. I did some work for Manasseh franchise. I did some work for, I provided some training to some employees from the Big Four, from these big banks. And actually, that was where I got the job at SocGen from, through going in to provide training for them. So what else have I got on my CV? My skills. So anything that I can do, anything that I'm knowledgeable about, I've included it there. Finance and governance, included that there as well. Documentation, what sort of profiles, what sort of processes or policies have I drafted previously? All of these includes them. Modeling tools, I've got these here as well: business impact assessments, threat and vulnerability analysis, quantitative and qualitative risk assessments, software tools that I can use. I've included them here. Infrastructure management, things that I've done. And then I've included one of my greatest achievements here as well, which I get asked sometimes in interviews. I transformed a technically focused IT team, receiving up to 30 complaints a day, into a customer-facing team, wherein 96.4% of 3,000 surveyed staff said IT provided a good, very good, or excellent service. So it's all there in my CV. And this is why I don't tweak my CV for roles. Because when you look at my LinkedIn profile, which we'll go to in a short moment, you may find that my LinkedIn profile is a summary of this. So, and I don't have that time to be tweaking and changing things. Now, my previous role, where I worked for 9 years as a CIO and head of information security, the role that actually started a season of trauma for me, that is no longer included on my CV because I left that role 10 years ago. And I've done enough in terms of qualifications, my voluntary work. I've done enough to be able to remove that from my CV, since it's 10 years ago anyway. Now let's take a look at the slides again. We'll go back to the slides. We'll go back to my CV, my unique selling point. We'll now take a look at my LinkedIn profile. What would I like to talk about regarding LinkedIn before I actually talk about the LinkedIn profile? Posting. How frequently should you post? Well, I tend to post about the ladder back downs activities, and I comment on other people's posts. Why do I comment on other people's posts? To increase my visibility and to also increase the author's visibility. I'm not job hunting currently, but I still want to maintain a public profile for when I am job hunting. And because I don't know always the status of the author, if they haven't got a LinkedIn banner open to work on their profile, I don't know whether they're posting just to improve their visibility so that they can get a job. So I'll try and comment. If I don't understand the post, let's say it's in a discipline that I don't understand, then what I'll do is that I'll simply not comment, I'll just like the post instead. So I'll like the post instead of commenting. If you disagree with someone's post, please don't comment publicly. Don't disagree publicly. Instead, just drop them a different note and say, have you considered this? If you want to disagree publicly, it's best to start your post by simply saying, your comment by saying, oh, that's a good article. Have you considered this? But don't try and trip someone up publicly or get into an argument with someone about their posts publicly. Don't do that, because you're not exactly boosting that person. You're not adding value to that person. You're taking away from them. So comment. If you want to disagree, do it constructively. Start by actually affirming them, recognizing the fact that they've taken the time to actually post an article on LinkedIn. Affirm them. Say, that's a good article. Have you considered this? Rather than, no, I don't think what you've written is correct. And you follow. So my LinkedIn profile, I follow just one or two companies, I think, or maybe I don't even follow any anymore. And I used to follow one leader. I used to follow quite a few leaders, but then more recently, I used to follow one leader in a company that I was desperate to work in, until I was forced to take that company off my bucket list. Like, it's not meant to be. But follow leaders that inspire you. Connect with others. Connect with recruiters. Build up your connections. I accept connections from anyone that requests a connection to me, because some people will say, and I understand fully, and there's no right or wrong to this, some people will say, I only accept connections from people that I've met. But if I'm of the understanding, which I am, that being connected to me can boost some people's sense of worth, if I'm aware that being connected to me and me commenting on somebody else's post may boost their confidence and their sense of worth, then I'll connect to you. I'll accept your connection. It's not always about what's in it for me. My life is definitely not about what's in it for me. Yes, many relationships may be mutually beneficial, but sometimes you just have to give of yourself, because that other person is not in a position to give back. So I connect with others, including people that I haven't met, because if I can boost your confidence in some way by you being connected to me, so be it. It costs me nothing. However, in some instances, I'll connect with a salesperson, for example. Next minute, they send me a sales pitch and I'll simply disconnect. Groups, what sort of groups do I belong to? And I'll take us through my LinkedIn profile in a moment. What sort of groups? I belong to groups wherein I can add value or gain value. I haven't cleared down my groups recently, but I need to do that. But I joined groups of where I've been, where I've worked in infrastructure. I've joined groups of where I currently am, financial crime, risk, cyber, etc., regulatory risk, join those sort of groups. And I also tend to join groups of where I'd like to be, what I'd like to do in future. My LinkedIn profile also contains recommendations. And I always give recommendations. So for example, anyone working on the Ladder Back Down project, the ongoing project, I will provide a recommendation once the project is over. Not to every volunteer that actually volunteered for the project, because many volunteered and they just haven't had the time to continue, which is understandable because it is a lot. People are working really hard. But if anyone's volunteered on the project, the least I can do is provide recommendations, because I've got recommendations on my profile from people that I've worked with. Endorsements. Again, endorsements. They're on my LinkedIn profile. So let's actually visit my LinkedIn profile before we come back and finish this session. Let me just make sure that I've actually updated, that I've actually logged into my profile. So what I'll do is I'll go on to the internet. In the meantime, I'm hoping that what you can still see is that slide. Let me go here, LinkedIn. Okay, and there is my LinkedIn profile. And I'll now come back to the slide and do a new share. And hopefully I should now see my LinkedIn profile. I don't like working with my screens, with multiple screens open. I always get into a mess. Okay, hopefully we can see my LinkedIn profile here. And I'll just go to my page and I'll bring up my profile. Okay, so here is my profile here. And I've deliberately loaded it with my certifications up front, stated what I am, not a job title, but what I do. I lead cyber, third-party risk management, cloud, tech, compliance, and risk teams. And I can provide my expertise in those areas as well. Then I've got my certification here. Then I've got the uni that I went to obtain my MBA from. Now let's take a look down here. Here are some posts that I've produced. We've got when I was awarded 30 top female cybersecurity leaders in the UK in 2022. But again, that's not the sum total of me. I've got this story of this little girl is me, of when I was growing up. That was an exercise that was done on the in the UK a year ago. I've forgotten who did it, but what the organization was that did it. But they did this series on This Little Girl Is Me, and I decided to take part and to tell my story of where I was born, how I was not academic. So please, again, don't worry if you're not academically inclined. You can learn in many other ways than going to university. Just keep learning. I'm not academically inclined. I've struggled to learn. It's a struggle for me to read. It's a struggle for me to keep reading, to absorb information. And when I was young, nobody had heard about dyslexia, autism, all of that stuff, Asperger's, high functional autism, that nothing about that was known. Nowadays, they refer to it as neurodiversity. And I would implore you